I want to welcome Adriana Matthew. And Adriana has been just, you know, an exemplary student leader. Her name is pretty universal at Lehman College. Everybody knew who she was as a club president, as a student leader, as a friend to a lot of students. And this workshop happened not because we thought about something we wanted to do for students who were pre-law, but because she reached out to us and said that she wanted to do something to give back to Lehman students. So this really is about her and her compassion and wanting to give back to Lehman. So thank you so much, Adriana. And I am going to mute my microphone and let you be the star that you are.
Thank you so much, Suzette. Clearly, it's a little much. I don't think I had that much of a presence at Lehman, but thank you. Suzette was always a great mentor. I remember countless times before events running into her office and just crying and saying, oh my God, this is going wrong. And Suzette would always just calm us down and be like, okay, let's see what we can do. So as always, thank you so much, Suzette. I'm so glad to reconnect with the Office of Campus Life and also with my fellow Lehman campus. So I'm just going to start a presentation. I have a very brief sort of presentation just to take you through certain things. And so let me just share my screen and then I'll formally introduce myself. Okay, now I'm always on the receiving end of things, so I never know how to do things. Okay, sorry, I think I got it. Okay, so I think we're looking at the PowerPoint. Am I correct? Okay, great. So let me just start the presentation. Okay, so this program was named Pathways to Law School. Hi everyone, good evening. My name is Adriana Matthew and I am a third-year law student at Albany Law School. I went to Lehman College between the years of 2013 to 2017. I received my Bachelor of Arts in Art History from there. I was also a Macaulay Honors student while at Lehman. I was also the president and founder of the Lehman Bollywood Dance Club, which is the club that Suzette was referring to. We had a great, I personally had a great time in everything that I did at Lehman, and I just happened upon law school. And I thought, I have been speaking to a couple of law students, and I thought, you know what, I want people to learn from the mistakes I made and learn from the successes I have had so that you all don't need to pave your own paths. Maybe you can build on what I have learned. So I actually am the only lawyer in my family. My entire family is a family of healthcare professionals, from doctors to nurses to what have you. When I told my mom I was going to law school, she looked at me and she was like, are you sure? We don't have any lawyers, you know, so you're going to be by yourself. And I really was by myself. I had great mentors, but I didn't know anyone in the legal sphere, and I paved my own path. It is a little bit unique because I didn't have the best GPA going into law school. So I'm just here to dispel the myth that, you know, if you don't have a great GPA, you're not going to get into law school. If you don't have great statistics, you're not going to get into law school. Your path may be a little different than what others are used to. You may not be a star student at Harvard Law School, but there are law schools that will appreciate your journey and your experience that you bring to the classroom and to their class profile. So law school is definitely a path that you can take, even if you don't meet the statistics. And I will show you how you can sort of navigate this extremely gruesome process that can be sort of daunting. And especially if you were like me when you went through law school and you did it by yourself, then, well, you are doing it by yourself, then, you know, I just want you to know that I'm here as a resource that you can use. You can email, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll have all of my information at the end of the PowerPoint, so you can jot that down. So let's get started. So first and foremost, you know, choosing to pursue a career in the legal field. You what made you want to think about law school? I can talk about what made me think about going to law school. I actually didn't want to go to law school to pursue a traditional career. I didn't want to be a litigator or any of the other traditional roles that those who pursue a JD end up getting into. I wanted to go into public health policy, and I wanted to be a policymaker. So for me, it made a lot of sense to have a legal background so that I can be a more sound policymaker. And when I got into law school, I realized I actually really liked it. I liked sort of traditional roles that a lawyer has, and I went through a lot of internships, and I went through a lot of possible field choices before I rested on my current field choice, which is civil litigation with an interest in health law. So, I was interested in lobbying. I was interested in going into corporate law. I was interested then going into becoming a general counsel at a hospital. And my resume actually reflects all of that. It reflects my multiple interests. I've done internships where you name it, I've done it. I've kept myself busy, but all along the while, I realized that, I wanted to be a traditional attorney who litigates, and by litigates, I mean, who speaks on behalf of their client in court. And I realized very early on that I had no interest in criminal law. I had more of an interest in civil law, which is all matters that are not covered by the criminal penal code. So, I just want to tell you that even if you take a JD, you have other options. You don't have to go into a traditional route. What can you do with a JD? Okay, now I'm having a little, oh, there we go. So what can you do? What do people who have a JD, which is a degree you get out of law school before you pass the bar? It is called a Juris Doctor, so it's a JD. You can go into all of these sort of alternate career roles. You can go into public policy, which is what I wanted to do. You can go into business management. You would not believe the amount of people, the amount of students that come into law school to get a JD and go on to have their own businesses. And they always find that they have a great advantage when compared to those who don't have a JD. You can go into publishing and media, and you can teach. You can go back and teach law students, and you need a little bit of experience. You can't just go right into a professorship right out of law school. You need to get some experience, but clearly there are alternate careers that open up to you with a JD if you so choose. So now, what is law school really even like? I heard so many variations of crazy stories of professors calling on you, this cold calling, when they ask you to give them the facts of the case or what the ruling of the case is. I've heard all of these crazy stories. If you go online, you will actually, I was terrified before I went into law school. So how much of that is really true? Turns out it's about a 50-50. Some of it is true, some of it is not true in its entirety. Some of it is 100% true. So let's take the first point. Do you have to wear suits to class? No, I think the whole dressing nicely to class lasted about 2 weeks before exhaustion and everything else took over. And I just wore whatever was clean at that point. Just, look presentable. You don't have to wear formal attire to classes. You wear formal attire for other occasions like networking events where it makes sense, but you don't have to wear a full suit. But if you want to wear a full suit, you can. Nobody's going to judge you either way. People are just going to assume that you have your life in order, which I've also learned is not the truth. So whatever puts you in a good mood to learn and to be present in the classroom, just do that. Just be careful not to wear offensive clothing, and by that I mean, just be careful about the printage on hoodies, for example, or on t-shirts, graphic t-shirts and such. I would just wear anything that you feel comfortable in clearly, and that is respectful of your professor's time. You don't want them to feel disrespected in any way. And cold calling, is it so let me actually tell you what cold calling is. So cold calling is unique to law school in the way that professors pick on you. And they don't just pick on you, they tell you, walk me through the case. So you'll have assigned reading for a class, and you will be expected to know the facts of the case, why the judge ruled a particular way, all of this incredible amount of information. And when the professor kind of picks on you, you kind of have to present the case. I always viewed it as a sort of presentation. It's a conversation you have with the professor, but it's supposed to show them that you've done the reading, that you've absorbed the reading, and you kind of know what you're talking about. I have been called on when I didn't do the reading, and I had to go through the embarrassment of telling the professor, I did not get to the reading this week. And I've also seen some of my colleagues be called on, and they try to sort of circumvent, come around the whole case, and they try to sort of give the basic facts and things that they can look up on Google really quickly, and the professors kind of know at that point, that you haven't done your reading. My go-to is just be honest. If you didn't do the reading, just say you didn't do the reading, just sort of swallow the bitter pill, and the professor will move on. Yes, you will be embarrassed. Yes, you will probably think that your classmates will remember it forever, but really everyone's in the same boat. Everyone's just as terrified. Everyone is just as, sort of embarrassed when the situation happens. So just move on, read for the next time, make sure you actually understand the cases. Cold calling it can be terrifying. I think my first semester, I blacked out the experience. Every time the professor called on me, I would sort of have a conversation with her, and then afterwards, I wouldn't remember what I said because I was just so terrified. But it makes you a better orator. It makes you present your ideas in a better way. It sort of gets you over that fear of public speaking. Some people don't really get over it. Some people get over it. I got over it pretty quickly because I realized I had to remember what the conversation I had with the professor was. So, and then, this sort of students ripping out pages in textbooks and library books, it was a sort of common thread, but I don't think it happens in every college, for example. I don't think it happens everywhere. It doesn't happen in my university. Students are fairly civil with each other. Yes, we are highly, highly competitive people. You sort of realize when you get into law school that you have to be competitive. You have to be on your A game. So in that way, yeah, students are competitive, but I haven't come across any sort of ridiculous drama in the way of, ripping pages so that other students don't get to the case brief or whatever. That's never happened in my university, but I have heard that it happens elsewhere. So, when you decide on your university, on a law school, just make sure you do your research and make sure that this doesn't happen there, or, that you're the first to get some textbooks, whichever one happens. Discriminatory attitudes towards students of color. This is, sorry? Ooh, I thought we had a comment somewhere. Okay, I'm just gonna keep going. Discriminatory attitudes towards students of color. This is a hot topic. I definitely felt that there was, I wouldn't say sort of hot, I wouldn't say it was a direct sort of discriminatory attitudes. I think just some of the students were not used to being around students of color, and others were racist. This is a very hot topic, and if you're a student of color going into a university, you have to remember to not, one, let your voice go. You have to stand up for yourself, and that, just find a group of people that will appreciate you, and of course always, if it gets out of hand, report it to the administrators. But this is a sort of, it's a case-by-case basis. I felt very detached from my sort of class because the majority of the students going to the class were students who are either Caucasian or white, and there were very few of us students of color. So it was it was more of a culture shock going from Lehman to a law school of this kind. So I would be prepared for that sort of culture shock, but again, it's not the same case everywhere. So, you know, there are law student associations, more like student clubs, who sort of come together. There are law student associations, like, for example, the Asian Pacific American Law Students Association, which is what I'm part of. So my fellow Asian students, we all come together and we share experiences, we mentor incoming younger students. So, you know, you do have a community that you can belong to. You just have to sort of find them. And then networking and job opportunities. It's the same as any professional graduate program. You have to find the opportunities, build. The one piece of advice I could give you on this particular topic is build a great relationship with your career service center at the law school. They're your greatest resource when it comes to jobs and networking. You know, the school might not have a direct link to a firm or to a company that you're trying to interview at, but they might know someone. So they're the greatest resource. I have a great working relationship with my career center advisor. I call her my law school mom. And she's great. She checks in from time to time. She's like, Adriana, how are you doing? What are we doing this semester? You know, where are you interviewing? Let's talk about it. We get coffee. Now we need a resume. And it's a very sort of informal relationship, but it's a relationship I've built with her for the past 3 years. And it's a great resource to me especially because I don't think I'm going to end up staying in Albany. I have plans to move back into the city. So the law school being in Albany, I have to leverage a wider reach of a network. So my career service center advisor is amazing at that. She'll put me in touch with, you know, alumni who've made a similar move, and I've gotten great informational interviews out of it. I've got job offers out of it. I've got interviews out of it. So great resource. Always seek them out. They will seek you out too, and always build a relationship with them. So those are sort of the big topics I think I was curious about when I was sort of researching law school. So if you have questions about, you know, other topics, we can go to them at the end of the presentation. So just hold on to your questions if you have any. So this is a big part of my presentation, undergraduate statistics. You know, what do transcripts of students applying to law school look like? What do their Lsat scores look like? What do their extracurriculars look like? Are they overly sort of qualified to applying to law schools? I mean, could they get Nobel laureates? Probably. I mean, some students are really qualified when they apply to law school. So the biggest thing, your biggest advantage when you are researching law school is that law schools actually publish their admissions statistics of the class that they just interviewed, or depending on when you look at it, the class that they just accepted. And they will go through everything. They'll break it down. They'll tell you how many applicants they had, how many students accepted their offers, how many students are female, how many students are male, you know, what sort of ethnicities they are, what languages they speak, what sort of careers they come from. But the biggest thing that you would have to look for is the distribution of the GPA and the median Lsat score. This gives you an idea of where you stand if you apply to the school. Now, I'm actually going to share with you the GPA that I applied to law school with and the Lsat that I applied to law school with. So when I graduated, I was actually doing pre-med and it ruined my GPA. I don't regret doing it, but maybe certain classes. Organic chemistry was my Achilles heel. So, you know, it was really bad. My GPA when I applied was a 3.45, which is sort of a basic graduate GPA. It wasn't the greatest. It didn't make me competitive. But, you know, when I was looking at law schools, I definitely paid attention to what their median GPA is. This is Yale. So as you expect, the median GPA is a 3.9. It's pretty high. I didn't even meet the low sort of, you know, the 25th percentile of the applications. I was entirely sure that I wasn't going to get into law school with my get into Yale Law School with my GPA. But, you know, so that told me I had to become more competitive with my Lsat score. So maybe I could leverage both. So when I sat for the Lsat, got a pretty decent score. I had a 168. It wasn't too competitive in the 170s range, but it was a decent score. It was a solid score. So, that sort of pushed me out. But so you see, like, I had a 3.4 GPA, but I had a 168. My LSAT was higher than the 25th sort of percentile. So I was like, okay, I might have a fighting chance. I didn't apply to Yale Law School, just a, huge disclaimer. I didn't want to apply to Yale. I didn't want to go too far away from my family. So in contrast, I'd like to show you the statistics for Cuny Law School. So Cuny Law School is actually a great law school for public interest students. It's actually named, I think, #1 in the country right now. #1 in the country. It's not even in the state, it's in the entire country. So if you have an interest going into, for example, if you want to go into working for the district attorney's office, or if you have an interest to work in other sort of the legal aid, public interest sort of endeavors, it's a great school for you. It's actually made just for you. Here, as you see, the 75th percentile, the LSAT, so now we're talking about the sort of higher range. We're talking about the top of the pile. My GPA is still kind of low, but my LSAT is well above the 75th percentile. I had a 168, I'm 10 points above at this point. So this is a great school for me to apply to. So the whole point of me showing you these statistics is to show you that law schools have different accepting sort of procedures. Depending on the law school, they have a different sort of kind of students coming in to apply. Cuny Law School actually sees a lot of students who've had a career already coming in to do law school. So it's sort of a very great environment. It's a more mature environment. I know students who went to Cuny Law School and said they had a great time. They felt like their class discussions were always of an amazing quality because the students who went there had already had all these experiences that they brought to the classroom. So, when you apply to law schools, when you decide on that list of law schools, pay attention. Make sure you apply to law schools where, you are a competitive candidate. You might not be a competitive candidate at Yale or Harvard for the most obvious reasons, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to be competitive elsewhere. Of course, there's also law school rankings that you need to take into consideration. If you go to a lower ranked law school, the law school's reach for jobs and for interviews is less. There's always a sort of offset, right? There's always, you have to hand off something. You can't have everything if you're not competitive in terms of your GPA and your LSAT, but you can go to law school. It might just be a different journey for you. For me right now, going to Albany Law, these high competitive corporate law firms are kind of out of my reach, but that doesn't mean that I can't get there. That doesn't mean that as a law student, I'm not qualified to get there. It just might mean that I might not be able to get there right after graduation. So, just because your GPA is low, just because you don't have a very competitive LSAT score, doesn't mean you can't get into law school. It just means that your journey post-law school is going to look a little different. So my biggest advice for you to, in this portion of your application and in this portion of your law school application journey would be to be realistic and to set realistic standards. You can't expect to take a 3.2 and get into Harvard, and you shouldn't. That's just not, it's not a feasible thing. And just because Harvard is not feasible doesn't mean Cuny Law School isn't feasible. And clearly it's a great law school. I've met so many lawyers who graduated from Cuny Law, and they're great people. They're so educated, they're so intelligent, and they're just all around great people. So, just when you're applying to law school, just keep that in mind. And application fees is a real thing. You might spend a lot of money applying to law schools. Why spend money applying to law schools that are out of your reach? Be realistic with the amount of money you spend. I spent about $700 on my applications. And of the 700, I think I applied to 13 schools. Of the 13, I got into 6. So, and then the rest, and then I got waitlisted at around 3, and then I got rejected from the rest of them. So it was okay, but it was $700 that I spent on all these applications. Had I been a little bit more smarter about my applications, I would not have spent so much, and I maybe would have gotten into a lot more law schools. Who knows? I'm very happy where I am now, so I don't have much to complain about, but this is a mistake that I made, that I didn't do my research thoroughly enough. I sort of just assumed that they would see how much of a stellar candidate I was and accept me, even though the statistics say that they won't. I sort of just took my chance. And I want you to be smarter about it, because I don't want you to waste money. And I also don't want you to set yourself up for a rejection letter, which hurts a lot. So I want everyone who's applying to law school to be smarter about their decisions. And this is one way that you can be entirely realistic and entirely smart about your decisions. Do research on the law schools. Look at their admissions statistics. See what kind of students they accept. And especially pay attention to their diversity quota. What do the students who go to this law school look like? Do they look like you? Do they not look like you? Are you going to feel comfortable in this environment? Are you going to be accepted in this environment? Are there resources for students, who come from these different backgrounds to just be as competitive as maybe students who don't come from similar backgrounds? So pay attention to all of that. This is an extremely important step in your law school journey. Picking the right school is a make or break decision. If you're not happy, you have to remember you're going to hand over 3 years of your life. So you need to be happy wherever you are. And another thing to also remember is that you can transfer. So you can go to a lower ranked school. I had a colleague who actually went to my school. Her first year, she did great at the school. I think she was number 1 or number 2, and she transferred over to Harvard. So now Harvard isn't looking at her undergrad statistics, they're looking at her law school statistics. And in law school, she was a great student. So Harvard said, okay, why not come over? So that's also another strategy to employ if you don't get into the law school that you want to get into. So application. So this is a sort of timeline that I had, it's a tried and true timeline that I think is tangible, it's manageable, and it also spreads things out so you're not overwhelmed. I decided to go to law school after I graduated. So I think this is June, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go to law school. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, I want to go to law school the next year. I have all these things to do. Technically, you have a timeline between June and December to get everything done. And I didn't know where to start. I did my research, and by the time I sat down to prep for LSAT, it was sort of like end of June. I don't suggest this. If you know that you are going to law school after graduation, I would start the process early. Get as many things as you can done early on, especially your letter of recommendations. So, the April to May of either right before you graduate or the year before you want to go to law school, I would identify LSAT programs. So Kaplan has a great program. I did Power Score. It worked for me. It helped me sort of approach the LSAT in a way that I like approaching exams, so it worked for me. So do preliminary research on law schools, just like we just talked about, and then identify recommenders. If you have professors, they're busy, they have course load, they have finals, they might not be ready with their letter of recommendation if you ask them 2 weeks before. This is not a letter of recommendation to a job. This is a letter of recommendation to law school. They might want to do an interview with you. They might want to sit down and get coffee. Make sure you leave time for that, and make sure you get on their radar. Just, communicate with them that this is your journey. This is where this is what you want to do. And you are interested in, whether they would be interested in writing a letter of recommendation for you. Again, law school does not recognize a pre-law program, and no law schools recognize a pre-law program. So if you are a pre-med person who did art history, you can still go to law school. I am that student. I did pre-med, I was an art history student. My letter of recommendation came from the chair of the art history department and my Macaulay Honors director. So they were great, they had great positions, they knew me the best, and they conveyed how I would be a great law student and how I would be a great advocate for my community. That's what you need. So, that's the first thing. June to August, you have to really just set aside for your LSAT. Your LSAT score is important and continues to be important, especially if you don't have a competitive GPA. This is the one place that you can tell, you can show law schools that, yes, my GPA is low, but I have the necessary, I mean, I don't know if this is really the message, but you can show them you are still a competitive student with a higher LSAT score. So, and the LSAT is not determinative of how, you know, you did in undergrad. It's really just a mind game. I remember when I was prepping for the LSAT, it was all about just getting used to the exam. It was about getting used to the format, getting used to the questions, and taking as many practice exams as possible. I think I took like 12 before I sat down for the actual LSAT. So I didn't even, you know, when I sat down for the LSAT, I wasn't phased. I was confident with the exam. I was ready to go. I knew what sort of questions stumped me. I was able to manage my time. I was able to do all of those things because I just got so familiar with the LSAT. And that's exactly what you need to do between June and August. Get familiar with it. Sleep with the textbooks for all I care. You know, just make the LSAT your friend. Make it your best friend. You know, at any given moment, practice a couple of questions or devote a Saturday to taking a whole LSAT. Do it, get comfortable, and just repeat the process until you sit down for your LSAT. So now September to November is a great time for you to sort of work on a couple of things. I would work on, I would take my LSAT. I would figure out what day I want to take the LSAT. If you are sort of not confident about your score and you think you want to take the LSAT again before, you know, your applications go out, I would take it earlier than later. I think, you know, every year they sort of change when it's offered. You have about 22 days before the score comes out. So if you're applying in December, the latest you can take it is in November. And I would also work on my applications. I would finalize my personal statement and my resume. Personal statements across law schools, it's mostly the same. They just want to know why you want to go to law school. The biggest catch with the personal statement is you need to sort of tailor it to each school that you are applying to. Don't just write one personal statement and apply it, you know, send it everywhere. Tailor it to the school. Tell the school why you want to go to that particular school, you know, and it's usually about 2 pages, so you don't have a lot of space. So I would be very economical with my words. I would be straight to the point. Share with them your experience, why you chose the legal field, and why you think this school is going to, you know, further your interests in the legal field, how the school is going to get you to where you want to be. They want to know that you are applying to this school, that you want to commit to this school. So I would tailor your personal statement and keep that in mind, always in the back of your head. It doesn't have to be long. It can be a paragraph. Mine was a paragraph I had. So the strategy I employed was I wrote my personal statement and I left the bottom half of the second page sort of empty. And as I sent my applications, I took a look again at their websites, and I remembered why I wanted to apply to these law schools, and I made sure I put that in that sort of paragraph. It's a game changer. It really is. You would be surprised how many of the applications just go with a generic personal statement. And surprise, surprise, they probably don't get accepted. Your resume, don't do anything crazy with it. Don't do anything wacky with it. Don't put 500 colors on it. Just keep it straightforward. You want to make sure that you convey to them your education, your professional experience. Just make it follow, you know, something that's organized. Double, triple check for spelling errors, for grammatical errors, for, well, grammar errors, all of the above. You want to make sure that everything you submit is 100% error-free. That is really, you know, can you imagine a make or break decision coming down to you misspelling a word? So just, you know, lawyers have incredible attention to detail, professors even more so, and you want to make sure that you give them that sort of respect, and you respect their time, you respect the application, the admissions counsel's time when they're reviewing your application. Now, I wouldn't freak out about one error, but, you know, try not to have errors. It's a big thing. And, you know, December to January, I would apply. I sent in my applications right, I think it was 2 weeks before Christmas, because once you hit the Christmas time, no one's looking at applications. Everyone's with family, and rightfully so. So I would apply 2 weeks before so that it at least gets to the top of their pile. They might look at it before Christmas. They might not get to it before Christmas. It just depends on it. So I wouldn't, you know, as soon as you can get your applications, just get them in. And then enjoy your holidays. Take a break. Take a break. That is incredibly important. You are gonna, you know, this is a process that's gonna continue on to next year. So take a break, enjoy your holidays. And the earlier you apply, the earlier you get those acceptance letters. Now, between January to March is usually when law schools send out their acceptance letters, or they'll call you in for an interview. Either way, if it's good news, savor it. If it's bad, throw it out. Shred it, burn it, whatever you want to do it. Don't worry about it. You know, and also use this time to visit your prospective schools. Make sure it's an environment that you feel comfortable in. I visited a campus and I hated the library. I couldn't imagine sitting in there for, you know, 5 hours, let alone an hour. I couldn't imagine sitting there for more than an hour. So that school was crossed off my list, and it actually ended up being that they rejected me. So it was a non-issue. I was like, okay, thank you. I didn't like your library. I'm not going to go to this law school. I mean, sometimes, I mean, it's a little vague, but sometimes it comes down to that. You know, do you see yourself being on campus, you know, communicating with professors? Do you see yourself studying in the library? Sometimes decisions can come down to small details. So, you know, hopefully you get a great acceptance letter, you get a great financial package, you're ready to go. And April to May is usually when the final deadline is to place your final deposit, and you commit to one school for the next 3 years. So make sure you are visiting the schools, make sure you speak to as many students as you can on campus, get an understanding of what the general vibe is, what the general sort of environment is. And this summer before your law school, please don't buy your textbooks and start reading them. Please don't, you know, please don't refer to law school forums and read up on legal books of any kind, fiction, nonfiction, textbooks. Take a break. Do not do anything I mean, you know, sort of continue to build your mind, but don't think that you're going to get ahead by, you know, reading the textbooks. You are going to wish. You are going to wish that you took a break. I'm so glad I took a break before before law school started. I went traveling. I spent time with my family. I recharged. I knew that law school was going to be a grueling journey, and I took that time to really, really recharge. So, you know, I know that I'm like getting a little into the conversation and I'm running out of time. So I'm just going to kind of go through this really, really quickly. This is the most important thing I could leave you with. The summer before your law school, take that time off. Okay. We talked about the LSAT, you know, get a program that you are comfortable with, and stick with that program. If the program offers you a schedule, stick to it. Use your friends, use your family to hold you accountable for your LSAT prep. At the end of the day, it's just getting comfortable with the exam. That's all it is. It's just an exam. So treat it as such, practice as such, and just, you know, you'll be fine. I'm actually not going to talk about the program. I'm not going to endorse any program over the other. Like I said, I used PowerScore. It worked for me. Kaplan has a great program. And I actually don't know any others, but Kaplan and PowerScore have a great, you know, sort of reputation. So you can research and maybe you might find a program that I didn't find. We spoke about choosing a law school and all of the incredible decisions and the incredible factors that go into choosing the law school. So just keep that in mind, that it's going to be your home for the next 3 years. Make the right decision, right? You know, pick the one that you feel most comfortable with. Pick the one that accurately reflects your interests and your character. And I've had questions about a gap year or second, you know, career sort of advantage, and it is an advantage. I took a gap year. I chose this time to intern with an assemblyman, and I got hired to be on his staff. I you know, I sort of networked. I had a great, and I was going to Albany, so it just sort of worked out for me that he was also, you know, he's an assemblyman, so of course his base half of the year is going to be in Albany. So I already knew some people in Albany. I knew some higher ups, and it was just a great experience for me. I built transferable skills that I could take with me into law school, into my legal career. So don't discourage yourself from taking gap year. If you think that it will be better for you, do it. There is an advantage for it. So yeah, so I think that's the end of my presentation. I made sure I was brief, but I went into certain things. We're hoping to maybe, you know, if you have any questions, I can take them at this time. And this is these are sort of my preferred modes of communication. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. I check my email all the time. So if you have any questions, I guess I could take them now. So if you can just unmute yourself and just ask me questions. If not, I think that's all I have.
Are you going to law school, Lawrence?
I'm thinking about it, Suzette, but I'm going to wait for some of the students to talk, and then I'll ask Adriana a question. So I'm not going to take over the floor because, you know, Suzette, I can do that. So I don't want to do that. All right, I'm giving it like 15 more seconds, or I'm going. So they.
I have a question.
Excellent.
Excuse me if you mentioned this and I didn't hear it, but I took a philosophy class as one of my LEHs, and the professor told me that the students that go into law school, the largest percentage of them are students that graduate with philosophy degrees. Is that somewhere near the truth, or was that professor just blowing smoke?
Well, actually, what I've come to know is that there's always just maybe an ounce of truth to all of the rumors you hear. I think it might be the case in certain law schools, but, you know, like I said, there isn't a recognized pre-law program. Some professors just want you to come as blank slate. So philosophy is a great program I think to sort of major in. It was awful for me. I hated it. But you know, I think philosophy, psychology, political science, history are, I think, the most common sort of majors. I think any major that furthers your analytical skills, your speaking skills, anything that, you know, you can major in science and have an incredible analytical brain, and that could, you know, sort of give you an advantage in law school. So I don't know. I can't speak to the entire truth of it, but it might be true in certain schools. But don't, you know, if you have a similar question, don't force yourself into one of the majors I just said. Do something that's interesting to you, and something that can help you, you know, further your public speaking skills, your advocacy skills, your analytical skills. Do what furthers those. But yeah, it might be true. Psychology is it's sort of, you know, used a lot in advocacy and in trial work. So yeah, you would actually be surprised how many times judges pay attention to body language, and they know how to recognize, you know, certain tics and certain sort of characteristics, and they sort of pull on that. So psychology is great, just it wasn't for me.
There was one time we were trying to start a pre-law club, Jonathan, at Lehman, and we met with some of those typical professors, like old school professors at Lehman who were law professors. And I remember one of them did say philosophy is really, they should make philosophy like the foundation of every law student. But then the purpose of this workshop is to actually show that there are so many unconventional ways of getting to law school. And I think you definitely did that, Adriana. Like, I mean, this was really, really good. All right, Lawrence, I can see you're revved up and ready to go. You drank water for this. I hope it's water in there.
Yeah, it is. It is water.
I didn't have a question, but I just wanted to say that, you know, thank you so much for doing this. It was super helpful.
Absolutely.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And Adriana, you answered that question in lawyer fashion. So I'll answer to the question. So I have a question. Talk to me about like what your plans are. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? I have a couple of friends that are lawyers, and what they charted out to do is something very different from what they're doing. So talk to me about what you see after law school. I mean, you talked about being in the health profession and all, but where do you see that taking you?
So, you know, my sort of retirement plan is, when I say retirement plan, I mean that in a very sort of sarcastic way. My retirement plan is to become the general counsel of a great inner city hospital. I really want to further sort of my public policy work. And I did an internship with a great hospital here, and I was with their legal team. I was working right under their VP of legal affairs. So it was a great experience for me, but it's something that I see myself doing farther down the line. Right now, when I have the energy, when I have the time, I really want to be in the courtroom. And right now, so I'm not focusing on health law right now. I want to pick up transferable skills, which is why I've expanded my field into civil litigation. I'm hoping to get in with a mid-sized firm, either here or, you know, back in the Bronx or in Westchester, where I'm closer to my family. And then within about 3 to 4 years, transfer over to the attorney generals. Well, not transfer over, but to interview with the attorney generals and to pick up, you know, incredible litigation skills, and then maybe do a 180 back into private practice. So if you ask me where I want to be in 5 years, I hope I am going to be in the healthcare bureau at the attorney general's. That's where I want to be. That's where I want to go. But I have a long way there because the attorney general does not take first-year associates. So we have to work our way there. So for right now, you know, whatever firm that I end up getting into, I would work hard. I would make sure I represent my clients well, but, you know, I'm just keeping my experience broad so I can eventually narrow it down.
Right. Excellent.
So do we have any other questions? Okay, well, you know, I'm always available via email.
You know, I have one more.
Oh, okay.
From Dave, I don't know if David, your mic came up. I don't know if you want to ask a question.
No, I just wanted to say hi. Thank you so much for this. I live probably like 5 minutes from Lehman walking. I am a 58-year-old disabled adult, but I had a background in law enforcement. I'm from the island of Trinidad, and I have worked with nonprofit organizations here dealing with, I'm actually a peer specialist dealing with people with mental health and stuff like that. So I think that looking at law would really be helpful for me. I'm also a former chaplain and pastor, and I see the need for this knowledge and how it would work in those fields. So I'm just here looking at you guys, listening to you all and learning.
Yeah.
You know, thank you for sharing your experience. You know, if you don't, this is something that I think I neglected to include in the PowerPoint. If you don't want to go for a JD, you can always go for a master's program in law. It's called an LLM. It's usually for 2 years. You learn most of the same sort of course material that law students do, but maybe not, you know, some of the sort of specialized material, but you get an understanding of the law and you are able to, again, hold similar internships. So, you know, this is a great sort of, it's an alternate path if you don't want to commit yourself to a JD, which can be expensive, it can be time consuming. And LLM is much more manageable, and you'll of course learn all of those, all of the legal principles that you can use then again to help your community, which is where I started. It was always supposed to be, I was always supposed to be a servant to my community. I was always supposed to help my community. So that's why I went into public health policy. That's why I wanted to be a lawyer. That's where I got my sort of field from, my path from. So yes, thank you so much for sharing your, you know, your sort of, your path. And I hope that maybe my presentation can make the legal field a little bit more approachable for you. And, you know, if you have any questions, please reach out to me via email. I'm obsessed with my email. You know, I sort of check it every 5 minutes. It's a horrible habit, but I check it very religiously, and I'm also available at LinkedIn. So I would love to, you know, if you have any questions, I'm approachable.
Good.
Excellent. So my last question, Adriana, is so can you really, if you can touch on this really quickly, so oftentimes, or in the past, you had to take a bar exam in each state, and I know they're trying to kind of have states work together. So if you took a bar exam, it can kind of go across states. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because oftentimes, you know, it was a point in time where you was in that state and practicing law. Now it's kind of opening up a little bit.
Right. It's called a multi-state bar exam. It's called a uniform bar exam. And certain jurisdictions, so when I say jurisdictions, I mean by states, they have certain laws that apply to whether you can transfer and how quickly you can transfer and what is sort of the deadline of when you can transfer your bar accreditation by. I know that some states require you to take a state-specific section of the bar, which would be, you know, certain contract principles, business organization principles. But if your state, so when you do research on this, you know, when you're sort of, which is where I am right now, I know that I'm not going to be transferring out, and I'm going to stay in New York, so I haven't really done a lot of research into this. But what I know is that if you foresee yourself moving out, you know, into a different state, make sure you take the UBE, which is the Uniform Bar Exam, and most jurisdictions in the country are UBE jurisdictions. So you can transfer your bar accreditation over. There are deadlines for that. I think some, you know, I think it's up to 5 years, 10 years. So just always go back to the state that you want to move to and just make sure that you meet those deadlines. You know, it's so state specific that I can't make a blanket statement, but yes, you can sort of transfer your bar accreditation over, but it's so dependent on what state you're trying to do it to. So, but the UBE is the exam that you're referring to. So that one allows you to move your bar accreditation over to another state.
Excellent. Thanks for that.
Okay.
So Adriana, I am gonna take a very wild guess that you didn't even have dinner yet and you were on the go all day. So we are gonna let you go, and we are so appreciative of you. So thank you very much for just giving us your time, for doing this, developing this workshop, offering to do it, and then, you know, committing to be open to our students. Thank you very much.
I always believe in the idea of giving back. I want people to learn from my mistakes. It was a journey that I had to be, unfortunately, alone on. I had the support of family and the support of friends, but I didn't have the resources. So I want to be sure that those who find themselves in a similar situation have me as a resource, you know, learn from my mistakes, use me as a stepping stone. Wherever I go, I make sure I pave a path rather than just close doors behind me. So please use me as a resource. Please, you know, if you need help with your personal statements, your resume, if you want someone to look it over, shoot me an email. I really am approachable. So I hope this was helpful. I know that there were certain things that I didn't touch upon, but, you know, we had a limited time. So if you have any questions, if you have any specific questions, just let me know. I am going to send Suzette this PowerPoint. I actually already did, but I didn't add this sort of information section of it, Suzette. So I'll send it to you. And, you know, if you have any students who need my information, please feel free to pass it on.
Adriana, thank you. This was very good and comprehensive. Please go and get some rest, and I want you to take care of yourself also. Okay? You're so open, giving yourself to everybody. Take care of yourself too.
All righty.
Thank you everyone for